Welcome, everyone. It's Andrew with LHH. Or no, it's not LHH. I'm serving my own interests today. That's funny. It's Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate their value to find great opportunities faster. And yes, this is Career Happy Hour. And yes, I'm presenting myself. I'm affiliated with other companies, but I can assure you that today's session is my perspectives and my perspectives only. So I have some topics I wanted to cover today, and I'm glad to be here. Hopefully you're glad to be here. Let me know if you hear me or not in the chat, if you would, please. I'd appreciate that. We typically spend a little bit of time here letting people get into the stream and get acclimated. And welcome. Good to see you. Happy Friday, everybody. It's Career Happy Hour. And we have a number of people coming in. Good to see everybody. If you would, please go ahead and put in the chat your LinkedIn profile address. The reason I'm asking for that is because here's the thing. This is a community. Yasmin, good to see you. Thank you for coming in. Excellent. Jennifer, good to see you as well. Excellent. Good to have you. So what I would encourage you to do is if you want people to come visit you and schedule time with you so that you can have, how would you say it? Conversations, then we would put that in the chat. I see Craig has done that. Thank you, Craig. Appreciate that. So thank you for doing so. I have a number of topics I can talk around today, but truthfully, this isn't about me. It's about you. I'm here to support you and your needs. What does that mean? That means it's important that you put some questions in the chat about your career search, challenges you're having, things that you would like to see happen, advice you might have for each other, availability to meet outside of this a Friday session, Career Happy Hour, 3 p.m. Pacific time every week that I'm alive and working, I guess, a functioning adult, if you will. And it's good to see everybody. Man, it's been a week. It's been a week. Have you had some of those weeks before where it's like, man, it's been a week? And next week is shaping up to be about the same. So if you would please put any questions you have about career planning, getting a promotion, interviewing, networking, challenges you're running up against, brick walls you've hit this week, and see if we can't knock those things over. So please put those in the chat if you would. Alternately, if you have something that's a little bit more difficult to share in the chat in terms of a question, you can click the link in the description. It looks like it's in here. Let me see on LinkedIn. Yeah, it should be join the live stream for free video coaching. It's in the live stream. So if you get in the live stream description, regardless of where you're joining from, you should see a link there to join this live. You can tell me your challenge or your situation, and then we can discuss ways to get through that, ways to mitigate, and so forth. Now that we got some folks in here, it's probably a good time to ask you a favor. If you could just click the share icon down below and share this out with your networks and let people know that we're here to provide them free support in their career, I think that would be a great thing to do. I think it's awesome that there's a team of us that are here on Friday, here to support each other. Often enough, it's hard enough to do the networking and to meet new people. I want this to be a community where you can meet new people and you can have conversations about things, if you will. Good to see you, Teresa. Welcome, Leif. Good to see you. Cascade Locks. You must be on vacation. It's a beautiful area for sure. If nobody's been to Cascade Locks, I highly recommend a road trip, maybe in a group field trip. Anyhow, but if you could just share this out with people that you know in your network, so that we can spread the word that this is just a community where people are helping each other. You're getting some career advice from someone who's coached over 3,000 candidates, clients in group and individual settings. So I've seen a lot of different scenarios. I've seen what works and I've seen what doesn't. So what is the topic today? You probably saw it in the description. We're talking about how to stay safe and secure online. Now, I'm not a security expert. but I am going to share with you some things that you need to consider as you're going through and doing job search, whether you're doing job search or not. I mean, maybe just a general common sense on the internet, because we ran into a situation this week in our family. I won't share the details, but there was some compromised accounts, compromised accounts in our family that we had to reconnoiter and get back certain things. What did I learn from that? Well, the first thing I learned is that you should enable, if at all possible, if the tools that you're using offer this, you should activate two-factor authentication on everything. If it's offered, you should take advantage of it. Two-factor authentication is going to provide at least a minimal, a minimal layer of security or insulation between you and people wanting to do you harm. I recognize that there might have been a vulnerability on our side where it was related to an email address that I didn't use anymore for whatever reason was listed as one of the account recovery emails. So I would also go back and go through any of your important accounts and say to myself, okay, is this something I need to protect? And if so, do I have two-factor set up? And if I already had two-factor set up, I need to go back and make sure that only the two factors that I decide are actually put there. Okay, so I learned that hard lesson as well. So yes, good. All right, on the Wi-Fi from the Best Western. Nice. Good job, Leif. Good. If you have any questions, put those in the chat. Happy to answer. So what does that mean for people in career search? Well, one of the ways you can insulate yourself and your private stuff is to not use the same email in your job search that you use for your brokerage accounts, for your banking apps, and same with your cell phone. I'd really look at your cell phone as maybe a, how would you call it? Private information, and because people evidently can spoof a cell phone. So what would I advocate? Well, for job search, I might get a Google Voice number. So get yourself a Gmail and get yourself a Google Voice number just for job search. And that's what I'm going to use for job search. My cell phone, my private emails, the things I use for banking and brokerage, those are going to be separated from anything that's public. Okay. So that, the other part of this is a password, right? So I have pretty complex passwords that I use a tool for that. And there's plenty of them out there. I'm not going to, I'm not going to recommend one over another, but certainly having a super complex password that is individual to each account that you have, and having a way to save that password, maybe in a plugin that's secure and not saved in your browser. I wouldn't save anything in a browser anymore. I don't save those fill-ins, right? When you're filling in certain areas of a web page, the autofill, I've turned that off. I've turned off autofill and I've turned off saved passwords. I've actually put on, what is it? Chrome. Chrome now is set that it doesn't save any passwords at all. And it certainly doesn't save, any credit cards, right? So I turned all of that off. So I know this is kind of a dry, maybe not so exciting topic, but I certainly don't want to have you be in a position where you have to recover any of your assets that have been compromised. And I certainly don't want you to put you at risk, or at least you should be aware of how you can prevent risk in some of what you're doing. So it was just, it was a gentle reminder by me, because I went through a situation here this last week that I never thought I would, and we still don't know how it happened. So hopefully I'll have a more clarity on how it happened, because I had all those things set up, and maybe they just weren't as complex as they should have been. So if you can, the other part of this is login IDs, right? So if you're using an email as a login ID, or that system uses an email as a login ID, you might see if there's an option there to have a login ID versus your email. Because often if they have your email, that's 50% of what they need to gain access to your account. And if they can gain access to your email and reset the password, they can have access to your assets. So that's just not something that I would advocate that you do. So that's the little safety lesson for this week. Hopefully you all are doing well. If you have any questions, put those in the chat. Happy to answer. Okay. Another topic that came up today that I thought was kind of interesting was relocations. There's a lot of people doing relocation. It's something I knew was kind of going on, but I didn't understand how far people had been going, that they were working remotely. Often we don't know. Certainly as leaders in companies, you may not know where your employees are working from. Certainly you want them to be honest and tell you that, hey, I'm working from, I don't know, somewhere in Africa, right? I'm in Madagascar, right? I'm coming to you from the Bahamas, right? Whatever that looks like, from the Cayman Islands, from somewhere in Central America. It's one of those things that, hey, you could be working just about anywhere. And now I'm seeing people actually take advantage of real estate prices to sell what they have and relocate to places that are more affordable or meet their family's needs. I'm seeing a lot of people making actually pretty big moves for a lot of personal reasons, of course. And I don't know if you're experiencing that or not, but I think it's something we should all be kind of aware of, that if that's a movement or a trend in the marketplace, there might actually be opportunities there for jobs, for companies, right? Companies that are looking to expand, geographies that are in growth mode because there's people relocating there, companies that may relocate to those same geographies. Why? Because there's now quality talent in that space. So I'm thinking, just as an example, many of you probably have noticed that there's a number of companies leaving Silicon Valley and headed to places like Texas for various reasons. So what does that mean for real estate? What does that mean for any sort of supporting industry that would be involved in relocating companies and people to new geographies? I think that would mean that those industries would be in play. So things that you may not have considered before, maybe you came out of tech, okay? And maybe there aren't a whole bunch of jobs or in tech or software development in the space that you were in, or in the industry you're in, okay? Maybe that was hospitality. Okay, fine, hospitality. What if you walk that same experience over to, say, a real estate company, a company that does moving, right? A company that does executive housing, right? So relocating people, relocating a company isn't easy. There's a lot involved in that. And I don't imagine that that's going to happen overnight, right? I don't imagine that they're one day going to be operating in Silicon Valley and the next day operating in Texas. It's not going to happen. Okay. It's going to be over a period of time. Yeah. Thank you, Zai. I appreciate that affirmation. Here's the thing, and I appreciate that, is that there's a lot of people saying, okay, if I know that my money is worth 60% more if I leave New York City and go to Connecticut, why not? Why wouldn't you do that? And if you knew for the foreseeable future that the policy in New York City would be work from home, then that's certainly going to create an opportunity for people to get a more affordable, more amenable place to live. I think that's normal. And that has been happening for the last year. I think it's accelerated and people are becoming a little more comfortable with this work from home thing. And it looks like it's going to be happening for many industries for the foreseeable future, that they're willing to make some of these changes and relocate to places they may not have considered before. Okay. Let's see here. Looks like Deborah has something to share. Speaking of separate emails for banking, my banking/commercial email is a humorous phrase that makes people laugh when you read it. Important discovery: if you can get technical support laugh during support calls. Higher customer service. Let's see. Higher customers. I'm looking at this. Higher customer service as a result. Yeah, good point. I mean, whatever it is, I mean, it shouldn't be an email that's easily discoverable. It's not something you use for anything but your banking or brokerage accounts, that sort of things. So I need to go back and maybe take a look at some of my other emails, some of my other financial accounts, and make sure they're they're also secured. So change up them passwords. Good. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, as these people move, there's associated services that expand as well. And that might be Amazon needs to expand warehousing capacity because they're servicing more people. So that it makes sense to me that companies will start relocating. And then when companies relocate, there'll be ancillary services or growth in corresponding service providers. So that, and you know, Amazon would be one of those. So thanks for sharing that. I know that's true in just about every area where Amazon has high utilization rates and there's growth happening. So good call. Awesome. Any other questions? Put those in the chat. I want to answer some more questions. I love that you guys are making observations. If you're just joining, welcome. I'm here every Friday for Career Happy Hour to answer your career questions. That means anything related to career that you want to get an answer on or ever wondered about or wanted a perspective on that might be different from your own, just to, you know, feel it out, if you will. That would be great. Also, in the description, whether you're joining by LinkedIn, Periscope, YouTube, or Facebook, there is in the description a link to join me live on video. You and I can have a conversation, free coaching, free career coaching. I'm surprised at how few people take me up on that. I really am. I don't bite. I fill the air with my own voice because I'm just waiting, begging, hoping someone will come on, number one, and number two, might leave a message or a you know, something in the chat for me to answer. So I would hope that is going to happen. Okay. Anything else? Nothing else? Well, I mean, the other thing is kind of on my mind right now is spring, right? People, I think, even though it's cold in many places and there's been freezing weather and lots of snow and all those things, all that's true. Okay. But spring is coming. And my belief is as things warm up and the weather gets nicer, people have better moods. They're just truthfully in a better mood. And the seeds that you plant now, and this is the reason I'm thinking of spring, right? I'm starting to think about getting my garden prepped for the vegetable season and whatnot, is we're planting those seeds now. We don't expect to put them in the ground or harvest anything until the first of summer, right? And so that means we need to think in advance of the harvest for some of the things we're doing here in our career search. So if that's you, the seeds you plant now will make a difference. The people you contact now will make a difference. Not now, but maybe 30, 60, 90 days from now, that person you reached out to will come back full circle to you. And it's because you're making those contributions. You're offering that touch. So yeah, Tracy, good to have you. Welcome from the frozen tundra, formerly known as Texas. Yeah, hopefully everybody's safe and okay. You know, I say that tongue in cheek. We just happen in Portland, Oregon here to have be living in a neighborhood that has all the power lines underground. And, you know, I think we must have a dedicated, if you will, transformer. And so there's people half a mile either direction that were without power, but we had power the whole time, never went out. So certainly. And so that's another thing. Hey, maybe right now, the demand for generators is going through the roof. Maybe the demand for battery backup systems in the house is going through the roof. So who would I be looking for that? Who are the people that make generators? Who are the people that make home battery systems? Right. So now I'm thinking, hey, Tesla, Caterpillar, who are the people that make generators? I don't even know who because I'm assuming there's only a handful of people that make generators. They just slap other people's names on the generator. But I would think that would be a big one. Moving services, right? Somebody's got to move these folks from the Silicon Valley to Texas, right? Good. Any questions out there? Put them in the chat. Happy to answer. I'd like to hear from you. What questions do you have? Spring is coming. I can almost feel it. I think that's the funny thing. Even though we had snow here last week in Portland, I can feel that. Yeah, I bought a generator for 3 days before the storm hit. Yeah, good call. So that worked out for you, Dwayne. I appreciate that. Yeah, is that, hey, if you had bought one before the storm hit, it would be good. Yeah. So the funny thing is, you mentioned things like Ryobi, Honda, DeWalt, Ryobi, and I believe some of the other brands. I think it might be like Milwaukee and others. They're under an umbrella of companies. Honda, of course, is its own company. DeWalt's owned by Stanley Black and Decker. So, whether that's Craftsman or any of those others, it seems like they all have the same tools. They just put a different thing on it, right? A different label on it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, so if we're looking at that, I'm also seeing, hey, people, because they're work from home and they got to put in a home office. Maybe they didn't have a space to do that. They're putting in a man cave or a she shed or what have you. They're sprucing up a spare bedroom as an office. They're spending money at things like Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware, and so forth. Those are companies that you might consider as growth companies that might have an opportunity for your skill. That doesn't mean you have to relocate. It doesn't even mean you have to take a job beneath your means. It means, do they have space for me based on my current skill to do the job that I can offer some value there? And so that's great. Thank you. Hopefully, Dwayne, you're okay. I don't like to, disparage anybody's situation, but hopefully everybody's fine, that they're safe, and things are going well. So good. Finally, Tracy's got a question. Here we go. Here's a question for it. Is anyone seeing job descriptions involving hiring someone to do the things the division company do not know how to do? I don't know if that's something that I've found, but there certainly are no lack of job postings online. Generally, I don't see that as a trend. I see there are some companies that are maybe more advanced and more sophisticated or savvy or whatever you want to call it in their hiring practices, that they don't think they have it figured out, and their job descriptions actually are pretty short. And I think that serves a couple of purposes. One, that opens up the opportunities, but two, it also creates for you some confusion on what that role really is, which isn't a bad thing. Why? Because now you have an opportunity to present yourself as you, right? Here's what I bring to the table. Here's the things I'm good at. Here's the things I can do for you. And then they have an opportunity to see what's available and see if that's something they need. And I think in terms of the talent acquisition function, there's nothing more ripe for disruption than that function. Let's see. And two questions for Tracy. Thank you. Is anyone seeing job descriptions that include everything but the kitchen sink? Yes, that's always been the case. That's been, to a certain extent, talent acquisition, validating, earning their keep, if you will, by documenting everything. I've seen those probably far more often than the opposite, right? I don't know what I'm doing, or I need somebody that can help me do what I don't know how to do. So that is actually more common. Now, will they get somebody that meets all those requirements? Probably not. In fact, your odds of success are probably the same at 50% match as they are 80 in terms of getting an interview. And the person that gets the job is the one that's known and trusted and that they like. It's not always the one that has the most skill. It's the one that they can get along with. A lot of this is fit. All right. So, and the challenge we all have, and I'm not immune to this either. I mean, I see jobs and I'm like, wow, that looks like a really good job. And even though I'm an independent contractor and to a certain extent a portfolio career person, have my own business, my own coaching practice, right? I'm not oblivious to the fact that there might be a good job out there for me. Not that I'm actively looking, but occasionally you'll see things come across your desk, or people will email you something, or there'll be a LinkedIn message with a post to a job saying, hey, do you know anybody who'd be a good fit for this? And you read it and you're like, yeah, I would be a good fit for that. So Good. Survive fine in Beaverton. Yeah, we're in Beaverton too. So we didn't actually run out of any power, any water, anything like that. Right. Digging out in Northeast Portland. Thank you, Terry. Good to hear that. Awesome. Jennifer, thank you for the question. I appreciate that. I'm always looking for good questions. I have a LinkedIn question regarding the titles that go under your name. That's called a headline. Headline. It's 220 characters. Is it good to have many of them or just a couple? I think it's good to have many of them. It's a keyword-driven field that gives heavy weight to the algorithm. How do I know that? Because if ever you search for a keyword string in quotations in the search box on LinkedIn, if it's the exact thing that they have in the headline, it only produces one result. So if you have a bunch of unique things on your headline and you type that in the search box, it's only going to show you as a result. So I know that there's extra weight there. Now, does that mean it's static? No, it shouldn't be static. It's something that you need to change up, because here's the thing. Just as you're searching for jobs through the job feature on LinkedIn, recruiters are searching for candidates on the recruiter version of LinkedIn. So on recruiter version LinkedIn, they have alerts set up. Whenever somebody meets these certain parameters, boom, they get an alert. Here's a new candidate you can add to your talent pool for this requisition. And believe me, that happens a lot when you change the headline and you maybe change up the titles and experience. Not that I'm saying you misrepresent your titles. You might add content to the title at the back end or the front end, whatever that looks like. Keep the real title there, but add a little bit to the end of it. Okay. Yes, people there. So the thing is, hiring teams, you may be thinking they're looking for a unicorn, but they're not. They have a job description that says unicorn, but they hire somebody that meets like 60% of their needs. 40% they could do without. The rest is negotiable. There's always just a handful, and Terry could probably validate this for you in the chat. There's always a handful of requirements that they're like, these are the ones we need. The rest of that would be nice, but we really just need these 2 or 3. Okay. And it would be nice if the job description, and I'm not going to suspect that any company is going to take this advice, right? But it would be nice if they said, hey, we just need somebody to do really these 3 things most of the time. It would be nice to know that. Okay. Some might call it a purple cow, although purple unicorn sounds pretty good too. Good. Good. So Zai says, hey, some companies post jobs with recruitment hiring event, apply to attach email and show all the open dates for virtual interview, especially health and hospital fields. Great. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Even talent acquisition needs to innovate. And some of the ways they're innovating is to make it easier to get in front of candidates when there is no way really to get in front of candidates other than through their conventional methods. So they're having to have these recruiting things, these virtual career fairs. Terry and I talked about that just a couple of weeks ago about the virtual career fairs that are available out there nowadays. And some of them are pretty sophisticated. Okay. All right. So here we go. Speaking of the seed planting comparison you mentioned earlier, what is the typical lead time from job posting to screening interviews to offer? I'm going to suspect it's somewhere from 6 to 8 weeks. And that's rough. That's rough. Right. So that would be from the day it's posted. Now, that means that there's probably another 4 to 6 weeks prior to that, Dwayne, where they're formulating their needs, they're putting together the job description, and they haven't posted anything yet. That's where I want to be having conversations. It's a little more organic. It's a little more strategic. And if I can interrupt, and I mean in the most positive way, if I can interrupt that process with my expertise, then I know that I'm at least going to get an interview. Okay. So I would suspect that takes about 6 weeks. That's on average. Some companies are faster based on their needs and their motivation and how quickly they need somebody in a seat to do some work. It might be faster, right? I know, that the, how would you say, the gold standard, I don't even know if I'd call it a gold standard, is Amazon. I've seen Amazon bring people in, they interview them, and the next day they have an offer. So, I mean, it just depends on the company and their process. Okay. So yeah, you could apply to Amazon today. You could have an interview within the next 2 weeks and they'd offer you day after. Okay. Good. Let's see. Yasmin, thank you. I think this is Yasmin. I've got my LinkedIn open this time so I can make sure I know who it is, even though it says LinkedIn user. You might want to give access to third-party apps. Restream is a third-party app and I can't see it on my side, but that's fine. Okay. I responded to an online job posting and received an email from a recruiter who posted the job, asking me to send her a LinkedIn connection invitation. Why would she need me to send her an invitation versus her sending me a connect request? Primarily because sometimes they run out. You can actually run out of connection requests. If you look on LinkedIn's help section, there may be a point at which you can no longer send a connect request. Now, my suspicion is they've sent a lot of spam requests and that might have been turned off on their side. So I'd be really cautious. I mean, with recruiters, not that you wouldn't connect with them. I would just be really clear about whether or not this person is legitimate. There's just so many actors across the world. There are some populations that are in desperation mode because of the pandemic. And my suspicion is there's been an increase in identity theft and different kinds of theft, actually, just because people are desperate times, desperate measures kind of thing. Okay. Good. Let's see what we have here. So I would just use your best judgment. I would certainly have no problem connecting with a recruiter or having a conversation with a recruiter. I just validate that that person is legitimate first and not somebody in a nefarious dark web call center in somewhere in Southeast Asia. Just, I'm not making a judgment that way, but it's one of those things that you don't want to have an issue with. Good. Do you or Terry have a list of upcoming job fairs? No, but a lot of what's listed is listed publicly somewhere. So I would look on things like the LinkedIn has an events page. Go to LinkedIn events, type in job fair. Go to Eventbrite, type in job fair. Go to meetup.com, type in job fair. Go to your Google search, type in job fair, right? And see what comes up, virtual career fair, career or job fair, that sort of thing. Now, the thing is, though, these job career fairs aren't just a place to hire people. They're a place to network. And if you're expecting that out of a job fair is going to come an offer for employment, it's not. What might come out of that is an invitation to interview. That does happen. But the best part about job fairs, career fairs is the networking. Okay. Yes, good to see you, Linda. Did you have a question? Nope, no question there. Let's see. Question, Tracy, 3 questions in one session. Amazing. How do you validate that the recruiters are legitimate? Well, I'd want to look at their LinkedIn profile. Do we have common connections? Do they have a photograph? Do they have a website? How long have they been in the business? Their LinkedIn profile should say that. Now, if they're wanting to talk to me, I have no problem having a conversation. Doesn't mean I'm going to hand over my resume or give them access to my LinkedIn profile if I don't think it's relevant. But the idea here would be go ahead and have the conversation. Ask them questions. How long in the business? How many people have you placed in my industry with my title or my domain or this kind of skill set? Right? Where are you located? How many people in your company? How long has your company been in business? Right? So now I just want to make sure that because I've had recruiters reach out to me from India, Southeast Asia, places far unknown. I had no idea where they were calling from. So just know that there's a group of offshored resources that do this recruiting, and they may or may not be legitimate or even valid. So do your homework, just like anything else. I mean, do your homework. Do your homework. Any other questions out there? Let me see if there's any that I missed. Seed planning. Yeah, no, I got all those. Excellent. Good. Wow. Thank you, Terry. Andrew is correct. I like being correct. Thank you, Terry, for that kind post. The posting is a catch-all for as many candidates as possible. The actual gotta have elements are only about half, I would say probably less than half of the list. Okay. The rest of the elements listed are for refinement. By refinement, I mean that once the applicant meets the core elements, the additional elements that applicant fulfills allow the recruiter to narrow the list of potential candidates. Okay. So, and we certainly talked about that prior, where the recruitment function needs to recruit rather than filter out. So that goes without saying. Anyhow, yeah, and it still stands. If you have questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. Happy to answer. If you want to come on live, there is a link in the description above. Maybe I'll actually come over and see if I can place that here in LinkedIn for y'all. Live coaching now. There we go. So if somebody wants to come on live, that link is in the chat above. I'll also put that here on, let's see, live coaching now. I've got to distribute this to two different places because the one chat goes to LinkedIn, doesn't go to the others. So anyway, long story short, let's see. Oh, we got some questions. Thank you. Let's see, from Zai. Is it common for recruiters who recruit you, interview with the client, you get hired and paid by recruiter? Yep, that happens. That's called either a staffing firm or could be a contingency firm. But yeah, you would be paid sometimes by the third party. Other times you'd be paid by the principal. It just depends on the arrangement with the company they're placing you to, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that happens all the time. Okay. Good. Craig in the house with a question. A recruiter reached out to me. We had a call. I submitted my cover letter and resume to be forwarded to the hiring company. The hiring company director of talent acquisition viewed my profile yesterday. What action would you recommend I take? How about stalking or edible arrangement or I think I would just let it play out. I mean, there's already somebody there promoting you into the company. So that's something I would let play out until that process is complete. And then I would come backdoor with that person. But in the meantime, I might look at other people at the company that are in the operation, because unless you're looking for jobs in talent acquisition, then that person may not be the right contact for you. I'm suspecting it's in marketing or sales because I know you, Craig, that sort of thing. Good. Terry's got some advice here. Offshore recruiters. Some companies contract with offshore firms to do this work for them. There's many well-known companies that you never thought would offshore talent acquisition actually did. So keep that in mind. Good. You're welcome, Zai. Appreciate you leaving a question. Again, the link is in the chat. It's in the chat, and it's also in the description if you want to come on live. Otherwise, put your questions in the chat. Happy to answer. Happy to answer. Otherwise, we can call it a day. Unless somebody is looking to have their LinkedIn profile torn apart by me. Anyhow, what questions you have, go and put them in the chat. If you want live coaching, it's in the description above. And then go ahead and share this out with your network. I would really like to see this expand. On LinkedIn, we've really currently got 15 people live here today, so I appreciate that. Good. Any other questions? All right. Well, maybe I'll call it. There's nobody here saying they want their LinkedIn profile looked at, and there's no questions, and nobody wants to come on live. So maybe we'll just call it a day. And I wish you a great weekend. Stay safe. Wash your hands, wear your mask, do those things that you think are appropriate for you, and stay warm and help your neighbor. There's a lot of great people here that have put their LinkedIn profiles into the chat. I would absolutely be connecting with those people and having conversations, because we're here to help each other. Okay. Good. Hey, a question from Jennifer. Thank you, Jennifer. What questions do you recommend asking during an interview? Well, so I'm not going to tell you what questions to ask. I'll give you some examples, but you need to develop your own questions because this is a learned skill. Okay. This is a learned skill. Here's what I advocate, and this is going to take some practice, that any interview you go to, you prepare 20 questions in advance. Yes, I said 20 questions. And I'm not saying that because I want you to use all 20 questions. What I'm suggesting is that you, at that point, would run into kind of a barrier against some of the easy questions, and it forces you to think of other things to ask. So I'm going to give you categories in which to ask questions. First category, about the person. You're interviewing with a person. Ask about the person. What is their career path? What is their quote unquote XYZ company story? Where did they get started? What do they like about the company? Right? It's not much different really than networking. I'd have some questions about the person and them personally and their career path, their role in the company, how you're going to interact together, that sort of thing. Okay. Second thing, I'd have questions about the role, duties, responsibilities. Who do I report to? What are the teams I interact with? Right. The overlap between the first two is how will you and I interact together? That relates to the role. And you may not. That person maybe interviewing you isn't part of your operational chain of command, if you will. So that's something to think about on that side. So the person and the role. The third would be the company. Okay, the company. Where is the company headed? What is their philosophy on work-life balance? And you should know what your definition of that is too, by the way. I can't tell you how many times somebody asked a work-life balance question and they have different definitions of what that is. So it's individual to each person. Ask a better question, get a better answer. So if I don't want to work weekends, I'm saying, hey, how do you allocate weekend work? Right? You see how that's a leading question? I'm presuming that they have weekend work. I just want to know how they allocate it. And if they say, hey, you know what? We don't do weekend work here. We assume you have a life. Go have a life on the weekends. Great. Check that box off. Right? So some of this is not only related to the job and the role and trying to appear intelligent, it's also me advocating for my own happiness, my own joy. And the company wants that for you too. I don't know any company that wants you to be unhappy. Right? And this conversation in an interview is about fit. It's about fit. Okay. So what do we got? We got the people, right? We got the job, we got the company, and we got the future. What does the future look like? Okay. Not many people are ready to answer questions in that space. That's why that's such a good topic or category to ask questions in. Okay. What does the roadmap look like for this product line? Could you give me what is it? Just a high level overview. Where does this role lead to after I've been in it? Let's say fast forward 18 months, 2 years in this role. What comes next? Can you kind of paint a picture of me what the options or alternatives would be, or what are some logical progressions to this career? Right? I would think about the future. Think about the future, because in so doing, you appear to them as an employee, not a candidate. Okay. And so you might inject some ideas into the conversation based on those questions, but you're not going to make any presumptions. You're going to ask a question about the future and the roadmap and had they thought about certain things and where are you going in this space called, pandemic alleviation, right? So think about that. And a lot of that information, a lot of those questions you can formulate by using third-party tools. If you have access to them, where you can get some really good analyst reports on what that company is going through, kind of like a SWOT analysis. And often you can get that on publicly traded companies, but private companies, it's hard to come by. So the best resource to know what questions to ask is networking with people at the company. Go figure. It's funny how in some ways all roads lead all the way back to networking. Okay. All the way back to networking. Good. Oh no, Deborah's got a long question. I'll get to that next. But first, a word from our sponsor, Dwayne. I'm just kidding. Dwayne asked, during a recent interview, I managed to ask 5 questions. Most of my other questions were already answered during the interview. That's why you write 20 questions. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of the interview. You look down at your list of questions. You only got 5 and they answered them all. I ain't got any questions. In that case, you're going to be, swimming upstream. Okay. Because now you appear unprepared. All right. So Deborah, I'm just going to read your question. Need help crafting a message to LinkedIn person from same college who works at a local company? A company of interest. This local company has a JR role. I don't know what JR is, junior. I hope they might scale up to a more senior role. Plus, it taps into my early career skills. Don't sell yourself short. Do not go after a role. Go after a contribution. Okay? You're not going after a job. You're not going after a role. You're going after a contribution. What contribution can I make to this company? What I found is if you have a basket of stuff, this is your contribution, right? Your skills, your strengths, your experience, your education, your resume, for lack of a better phrase, your skill, okay? And you go and tell somebody about your skill. I'm not saying that that's to dominate a conversation, but you tell somebody about that skill and they say, wow, we need somebody like that. In fact, we have a gaping hole right here in this operation that you could fit. You know what? I think you should talk to the GM or the VP about your skill because you would make a great senior director here or a great whatevers. And often because we come in looking for a junior role, we sell ourselves short. Okay. We sell ourselves short because that's what we think we're qualified for. That's what we think they have available for us. When truthfully, every company on the planet has room for you. The question is how and where. How and where do they have room for you? That's what I would be asking to myself, not to people, to myself. And my objective is to make this much like a scavenger hunt. How can I find my little slice of the pie, if you will, my little puzzle piece in their organization? Okay. Most job coaches say throw away all but the last 7 years of your experience. And here I want to do the opposite. Well, you can include some of that prior experience. You just don't want to put dates on it. And the nice thing about networking, honestly, Deborah, is nobody has your resume. They're going to accept you at how you present yourself. So the challenge that a lot of us have is holding that application resume process at arm's length long enough to have a strategic discussion with somebody in an organization that we want to work for where there's nothing at stake. I think that many of us miss that. Numbers ninja. Interesting. Okay. Follow-up to my previous question. Are you stating that the director is previewing and if they approve, maybe passing it on to the hiring manager, so not beneficial to connect with the director? What I'm suggesting is if you are looking for jobs in talent acquisition, talk to people in talent acquisition. If you're looking for jobs in sales, talk to people in sales. If I'm looking for jobs in learning and development, talk to people in learning and development. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting that this person wouldn't be an effective person to connect with. They might be. I just think I would let that go. I mean, let that process run. I would try to identify people in the operation that I want to work within. And yes, the director of talent acquisition might be the right person, but they're not going to be the person that makes the ultimate decision. They might just place you as a resource. And then if it doesn't work out, they just yank you out of that resource. I mean, that doesn't sound to me like a strategic process, more tactical, if you will. Good. Your advice is spot on. I think they might have a bigger role for me. So don't ever ask about a role. That's the problem. If I ask about a role and it's a junior role, doesn't meet my needs and is beneath my capabilities, I'm now presenting myself as someone who's desperate. And I know that isn't the case. I hope it's not the case. And if it is, I'd at least want you to present yourself as the opposite. And so asking about a role is just not that effective, especially if it's an arm's length connection that you don't know very well. Okay. I reached out to a guy at one of a company. I mean, just to be absolutely transparent, right? There's a guy I know, known him for a long time, works at a company. I saw a position that seemed kind of interesting, reached out to him, and he plugged me right into the recruiter because I wanted to test how this would work out for me. Here's a stretch role. I looked at a role. It was kind of really a stretch for me, but I knew I could do the job. That's the difference, right? There's nothing I don't think I can do, but there's some jobs that I'm like, yeah, I'm not there yet, right? This one wasn't that. This one was like, hey, I think I'm there. I think I could do that job. And I felt it was enough of a stretch to not look like I was the 100% candidate, because I didn't want to be the 100% candidate. Okay. And so, yes, I mean, I'm not oblivious. I do kick the tires every now and again. And so that's something that each one of us should do. I advocate this all the time. So why would I not take my own advice? I would. If there is something better out there for me, I'm all ears. Okay. All ears. Any other questions, or should we call it? I think we might need to call it. I don't see any other questions here. So hopefully, Craig, you were satisfied in my answer. Sometimes I come strong, and hopefully that's okay. But it's something that I think, hey, you know what? I don't get dollars in my bank account when someone looks at my profile. I don't get dollars in my bank account when someone, actually responds to my resume cover letter. I get dollars in my bank account after I accept an offer and start work. Okay. And I can't get there until I have an interview. More often than not. Many people are not going to hire you without an interview, but I have seen many people get hired without a resume, or even an application in advance. They did an application as they were walking to the interview, right? So there's some things that can go out of order, but one thing I know that doesn't go out of order is that there's hardly ever an offer that precedes an interview. Hardly ever. There's always going to be some kind of interview and then an offer. So that order of operations is, I think, majority of the time in effect. Okay. Just keep that in mind. I can't tell you enough how important the networking is, and how important it is to make connection with real people and to offer something of gratitude and thanks, and to see what you can do to pay it forward with them, even if you don't expect anything back. Okay. If you store up enough into somebody else, it will come back to you. I can assure you of that. Okay. Good. So I don't see any other questions here. Anybody else have a question? I don't see anybody. Okay. We're down to 12 people now, a solid 12 people. I think we were as high as 16. Woo. We need more people here in order to make this a fruitful experience for everybody. I'd really encourage you to share this out with your networks. Let them know I'm here. I'm here to answer their questions. They're not alone. You're not alone. We're all here together. Connect with each other offline. Have a conversation on Skype or Zoom or phone. Okay. And don't wait. Do that now. Right? Set up some conversations. And even though your power might have been out and things were in a bad space, guess what? Many people's cell phones still worked. They just had to go out to the car and plug it in so that the thing wouldn't run out of battery. Right? But what is your commitment to each other? I guess is the other question here. What is your commitment to this community and other people in it? And see what you can do to offer value. Contribution. I talked about that. Often we're going to be judged by our contribution, what we give, not what we take. Okay. So be well, stay safe, take care, wash your hands, wear a mask, do the things so we can get through this. And I'll see you next Friday. Bye now.